Well, President Trump making what some are describing as a major shift on immigration reform last night, calling for a path to legal status for millions of law-abiding but undocumented immigrants. We'll show you what he actually said so we can pick into that, while still repeating calls, of course, for a border wall and warnings about criminals sneaking into the country. President Trump also called for returning American immigration policy to a merit-based selection process.
Switching away from this current system of lower-skilled immigration and instead adopting a merit-based system, we will have so many more benefits. It will save countless dollars, raise workers' wages, and help struggling families, including immigrant families, enter the middle class.
Joining us now, Michael Weil is an immigration attorney who counts Mrs. Trump as a client. Also, Stu Varney, we like to mention because, you know, Stu Varney drinks all the tea here. He's also a former federal prosecutor. And Hans von Spakovsky, he's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. And we visited with both of you over the last several weeks as we've been watching this issue on immigration. Hans, based on what the president just described there, focusing on merit, flesh that out for us a little bit. What did you hear in that statement? Is that anything different from what we have right now?
Oh, it sure is, and it's a very wise idea. Look, we get around 500,000 low-skilled, poorly educated immigrants every year. They are a net drain on the American economy. If you take into account the taxes they pay versus the amount of benefits they will get from the government over their lifetime, it's about a $400,000 deficit over 10 years. That's $1.75 trillion eventually over the lifetime of all these immigrants. Merit-based system is much better idea. That's the kind of system that Canada and Australia have. Interesting.
So my mind is a little swimming with those numbers. Michael, how do you see it?
Thanks for having me back. Hi, Hans. Again, unfortunately, I disagree. I spend my day toiling on merit-based visas, the O visa, which classifies the world's talent in arts, business, entertainment, and athletics, the E visa, based on the merits of starting a new business narrative and having a lot of money. We already have a system in place that protects American market. The petitioning process on work visas and family visas hail from U.S. citizens or U.S. employers. So it's a false narrative to think that we don't have a merit-based system.
Should we be expanding it, though, Michael?
Yes, and that's where I agree with Hans. We should have everything. Look, immigration is a beautiful potpourri of family visas, of work visas. We need people at the top tiers, the extraordinary ability, the exceptional ability applications we do for scientists and fashion models and stars. And we need people to pick blueberries. And we need to have a robust market and talent that's available for everybody. And I think the president is looking to Australia, to Canada, to make sure that we mirror some of the shades of gray that we have. We've been putting a Band-Aid effectively on every broken immigration law. Congress, I don't think, can do reform or comprehensive reform well. That's something that I'm beginning to see. But the deafening silence in Washington has left us with a broken system. And if you just take the fashion industry, for example, you can't bring models during Fashion Week. And it's a misnomer to allow a system not to meet the merits of employment. And one final word, President Reagan himself shifted the responsibility in 1986 to employers in a different economy. It's still burdensome for us to have employers meet the metrics that they need for their wares and for their workforce, and then punish them if they don't police immigration properly in their workforce. It's the job of the government.
Okay, there's a lot there to unpack as well. And quite frankly, it is a big topic, immigration, Hans. So let's take this one at a time. Do you also agree with Michael that reform might be out of reach, that we're not going to see the sweeping reform that President Trump encouraged Congress to try to drive towards last night?
Well, I think that is going to require members of Congress to agree on how legal immigration should be reformed. If, in fact, there's a push for amnesty for illegal immigration, that would be a distraction from the real issues here. And the priority of the administration ought to be, and it apparently is, border enforcement and enforcement of our interior immigration laws. any talk about amnesty for illegals, which did not occur in the speech last night,
Okay, and
would be a distraction.
I want to point that out because the president holds these conversations, part of which can be on the record, sometimes they're off the record, with journalists ahead of his address. And that's where there was apparently the reporting that he might be open to a pathway to citizenship. And again, you're coming from reports from the inside of this conversation. He did not include it in his speech, Michael, last night directly. So there's this left up kind of with some wondering, well, where does he really stand on this? And
That's right.
could he be open to it? And is there the ability to compromise?
I know the Trump organization and many of the family members. I know them to be extraordinary, compassionate people. They recognize that America's workers have family members and that you get a much better worker, whether it's an extraordinary talent or somebody working in a field, when they're motivated by their family members and the hallmark family reunification that our immigration laws speak toward. So I believe in my heart that this president has not opined yet on DACA, because there are 820,000 people, but for the grace of God and their parents, were brought to our shores and are swearing their allegiance to the United States. They don't have accents, and they're fighting in our military.
So, Hans, what do you think about that? Would that be a deal breaker for you as you're looking at immigration policy and weighing in on it? If you found out that President Trump is actually open to a pathway of citizenship in some form or another, it may take several years. Maybe we don't know how long the pathway would be. Would that be a deal breaker, or do you think you could get behind something like that?
Well, I'm not in a position to make deals, but I would point this out. Twice in the last 2 decades, we've had 2 different presidents of 2 different parties propose amnesty for illegal aliens. Congress, both times, rejected that.
Right, but it's timing, right, Hans? Timing is important for when these ideas are presented.
Yeah, but look, right now, this president made a promise of securing the southern border and finally enforcing our immigration laws. That needs to be his.
And Jenna,
and if he does that, let me just hold on one second. If he does that, because that's been the caveat by conservatives, we need a secure border. So if conservatives see a wall going up and they see a secure border, will they be open perhaps to something that looks like a pathway to citizenship in the effort for immigration reform if we see that change?
I think it's too early.
I'm sorry, Hans.
It's too early to talk about that. We have to first see whether the border is secured.
Okay, Michael,
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. We're going to shut down the front door when we have in our backyard 11 million people here without the authority. Our homeland is just as vulnerable with all the terror cells abound in our nation states. So, again, the bottom line here is we are at risk with a broken immigration system. We are not embracing the extraordinary inventory and human resource that immigration gives our economy. And you have to work both. You want to build a wall that's proper, that admits legally people and also embraces all of the diversity, and at the same time, fix the 11 million people here. We don't have enough handcuffs, airplanes, beds, and detention centers to then FedEx people out of this country, and we're not going to.
A big, beautiful wall, I should mention.
Huge.
The question we're asking is whether or not that's the paradigm shift. If that is the shift in the conversation, if that wall starts going up, does it present a different environment that hasn't been presented over the last several administrations to move forward with reform? Hans, your final thought?
That is one of the steps. But the other step has to be interior enforcement of our immigration laws. And by the way, that means enforcement against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens. If you start doing that, huge numbers of the illegals who are here will start to self-deport because they can't get jobs and they can't earn money.
Well, and the president did reiterate that. He said we need to uphold laws and defend borders, and so he did say that.
And respecting the laws on the book generally are important, but the books were written in 1952, 1965, and 1986. There's a new normal now, and we should be embracing the diversity and the robust contributions that immigrants give to this nation.
I actually think we're in a moment where I don't know, I'm sort of feeling like you two are warming up to each other, which might be a signal of a change in the debate. I'm not sure. It's just a gut feeling, and it's something we'll continue to discuss.
Only you can bring a fair and balanced dialogue.
I don't know.
So.
I don't know about that. Hans, Michael, it's a great discussion and obviously rich with a lot of different perspectives, so we'll talk more about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can make use